Participants, you're most welcome once again. It's now time to start our webinar, and I hand over from the session control to Dr. Mari to take us through the webinar. Dr. Mari.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nicholas. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is Amara Haile Selassie from the International Water Management Institute, who is hosting this webinar series. International Water Management Institute and CGR Consortium Research, Water, Land, and the Ecosystem are co-organizing this webinar. As you know, Nile Basin Initiative, in collaboration with the government of Ethiopia, is organizing a series of webinars in the 6th Nile Basin Development Forum. Under the theme, Rethinking Regional Investment in Nile Basin, the Science Policy Practice Dialogue is organized to bring together Nile Basin initiatives with the stakeholders in the Nile Basin countries and around the world. The goal of the Nile Basin Development Forum is to enhance transformation process in projects that will contribute to Nile Basin Initiative's shared vision to achieve sustainable socio-economic development through equitable utilization of and the benefit from the common Nile Basin water resources. The theme, water resource, environment, wetland, water energy, food nexus, adaptation to climate change, transboundary water governance. Nile Basin is one of the most critical transboundary water basins in Africa, with the river Nile playing crucial role and the resource for most of the economic and the social activity for countries in northeastern Africa. The session today is about understanding, valuing water, and managing irrigated agriculture in Nile Basin. The objective of today's session is to organize current state of understanding and knowledge related to productive use of irrigation water, and to explore technology and the scenario and the policy direction enabling gains in food security and the nutrition. So welcome to this webinar. Let's have a fruitful presentation and discussion, and let's work together to incorporate those findings in our decision-making of our river basin agenda. Now, as you might have seen on our program, we have two keynote speakers, and we have 6 presenters, and then we'll have a panel discussion. The keynote speakers will have 15 minutes each, and the presenters 10 minutes. We'll have 15 minutes panel discussion to be moderated by Dr. Abdul Karim. We'll start with keynote speaker. We'll have first Professor Stefan Ollenbrook, Strategic Program Director, Water Food Ecosystem for International Water Management Institute. He is also co-leader of Land and Water Solutions, flagship research of Water and the Land Ecosystem Consortium Research, CGR Consortium Research Program. Currently, he is presenting from Sri Lanka. His background, hydrology and water management. His expertise include water resource, hydrological process, agriculture, water management, global change, sustainability, sustainable development goal, nature-based solution ecosystems, achieving outcome for sustainable development, and leadership of multidisciplinary team, bridging science, practice, and policy. He will give us a keynote speech on managing water we eat, some thinking pieces to get water management and irrigation right. Then we'll have Dr. Samu Mogas, an independent consultant research affiliated with University of Connecticut, and from USA, hydrology and water resource management is his background. He will give us a presentation on rethinking cooperative irrigation management in Nile Basin, projected irrigation development scenarios, and the role of water saving and cooperative water management. With this brief introduction of the keynote speakers, I would like to call upon Professor Stefan to give us his keynote speech. Thanks a lot. You have 15 minutes, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haile Selassie. Yeah, Mare, thank you. Pleasure giving a short presentation. I hope you can see my presentation by now. If you could just, I have two screens and I'm always confused which one I'm sharing. Can you see the presentation? If somebody could briefly confirm.
Yes, we see your
Yes,
screen.
we can see.
Perfect. Thanks. Looking forward, I would love actually to spend this afternoon with you in Ethiopia today. I haven't been there since 1.5 years by now, and it's always a pleasure being there and discussing the issues of the Nile. And the same is true for Egypt and Sudan. I've been to the countries many times, and it's such a pity that we all sit at home. Instead of giving a presentation only in quotation marks on the Nile, I thought of offering to you some think pieces for furthering the discussion in this kind of keynote. I felt it's good to address a couple of issues that are at play in the Nile as well as in several sub-basins, and I'm afraid also in many other basins worldwide. Yeah. It will be a lot about using water for agricultural water management, for producing food. And often when it comes to water supply and food systems, and I'm working for the CGI, I know what I'm speaking about, very much the focus is immediately on the food production side. However, I think it is important to realize that water is necessary for the whole food system, from the pre-production to the production, which usually uses most of the water, but also post-production, consumption, and disposal. Clean water is absolutely necessary for all steps. How can you have proper consumption if there's no clean water? How can we actually manage all the other drivers which are also highly interlinked to water? So water is not only an input to irrigation to ensure that we produce enough food. No, water is cutting across the whole food systems, and there's multiple interdependencies between water and all the other sectors at play. And that's something that is often forgotten. Second, I saw some think pieces I'm offering you this afternoon is the linkage to poverty. And while there has been nice progress, well, not fast enough, arguably, but good progress over the last decades when it comes to reduction of poverty. You see here World Bank data for extreme poverty. That means less than $1.90 per day purchasing power in 2011 time. And it has been decreasing, but now it is on the rise again. And it's probably a couple of tens of millions of additional people will be pushed into extreme poverty because of the implications of COVID. And that also has multiple impacts on malnutrition. And you see on this figure the percentage of people even moderately or severely exposed to food insecurity. And you can see, particularly in Africa, where the numbers are the highest, they have been increasing a little bit over the last years, so it's not going down. But if you look at the future predictions, because of COVID, they are very strongly on the rise again. And probably from being down at less than 700 million, we probably soon have to deal again with maybe even more than 900 million people undernourished. So it's serious. So we have to increase food systems productivity, nutrition security, and water is absolutely key in that respect. COVID-19 is something which currently gets a lot of press cover and a lot of attention, and you might have seen this figure before, and I really like the cartoon because it's the current wave of COVID that particularly in the northern news is covering a lot, or is dominating the discussion at the moment. But the economic recession that is connected to this is unfortunately exposing many more people to serious consequences, including death, many, many more than the COVID directly. And if it's climate change, which is maybe behind everything, is likely a wave that will hit us even further. And again, I do not want to downplay the importance of COVID. I just want to make the point that COVID, and there's many interactions linked to the economic challenges, as well as climate change. Climate change, I think you have seen these type of figures many times. It's getting warmer, and the temperature increase is something which we can measure relatively easily, even at global scale, relatively easily with some uncertainties. But from a water hydrology point of view, it's many other things that are much more serious. This is a figure which I offer you, which is an ensemble prediction of the mean annual discharge. It's an indicator of water resources availability, but it's the mean annual flow. And many of us working in arid or semi-arid countries, and we know the mean is something which you have maybe once at the rising limb and once on the falling limb, but this is never a situation that we actually have. So it's always about variability, it's about floods and droughts. But again, this is the mean annual discharge on a 2-degree warmer world, according to one of the scenarios, and then an ensemble of many different models. So it's kind of an average prediction. You see hotspots for climate change, serious decreases in the Mediterranean area, for instance, as well as Central America and some other places. When you look at the whole Nile Basin, particularly at the Ethiopian highlands, where some 70% plus of the discharge is generated, it looks rather as a relative increase of the mean annual discharge. Would that mean that we have less worry about water resources availability? And it's not the mean annual discharge. From an agricultural or environmental point of view, it's often the extremes. And this is a figure which tells us a lot, because the number of dry days, in particular, if they have a change of frequency of dry days, so with no precipitation during the growing season, that can really hurt a lot and kind of impact agricultural production. So therefore, this is a maybe much more telling figure than looking at the mean annual discharge. But again, in the Nile Basin, it looks not like a dramatic change. It even is in many parts of the Nile Basin, it indicates even a decrease of the dry days. So again, that could be read in a misleading way, saying that, oh, climate change is actually a good thing for the Nile Basin, and things are going better. However, there is a rapid population increase. I borrowed these figures from my colleague Amare, that we probably have an increase in the basin to 600 million in some 4 to 5 years. The renewable water per capita is actually decreasing, and it has been decreasing. You see this on the right-hand side on this figure. You see this is the renewable water per capita per year. And it has been decreasing rapidly, not so much of environmental changes, but also because of the rapid increase of the population. And we crossed already, for many countries, the threshold of 1,800 cubic meters per capita in year, which is an indicator of water scarcity, and it's likely to increase even further. And that is because of population increase and because of the change of the environment, but the population increase is more rapidly. So while we have maybe a bit of more rain, the water resources availability is likely to decrease further, and that is really exceeding thresholds to deal with. So it will be that more of average more on rain could increase the occurrence of floods, of erosion, of land degradation, as well as impact agricultural system productivity, ecosystems, etc., etc. So therefore, irrigation, as many of our research shows, is a response to that system, which helps us to increase the resilience of systems and also to improve the sustainability overall, if the irrigation is done in the right way. Irrigation is part of the agricultural intensification. However, it is a wider aspect of that. And Amare just published a paper recently on different ways of agricultural intensification, looking at Ethiopia, which I found is a very, very good paper to read. Sorry, I'm advertising your papers, Amare. I hope you don't mind. And the point I want to make when it comes to ag intensification, doing that sustainable, there's many ways. A lot of attention nowadays goes into better economic practices, better seed varieties. A lot of funds are spent on building more drought-tolerant seeds, which is important research. Better land management, better inputs like fertilizers or agrochemicals for pest control. better agroecological practices that can also help to intensify in this long-term sustainable way, as well as there is agricultural water management, better rainwater harvesting, better irrigation, as we will come to it, as well as there's socioeconomic measures that can also help. And there's a lot of scope for doing that. If just one argument for this highly qualified audience is maybe crystal clear anyway, but this figure is just so clear. If you look at the average yield for maize in high-income countries, it's 8 or sometimes 9 tons per hectare, sometimes even more. While in low-income countries, it's often below 2 tons per hectare and often even less than 1 ton per hectare, with a very high vulnerability to dry spells during the season. So there's a lot of scope to intensify in a sustainable way. Fully understand that low-income countries have, of course, other socioeconomic, other environmental, climatic conditions. That's clear, but still, there's a lot of possibilities to strengthen that. If you look at the global water use, again, I'm having a little bit of global picture today to provide some inputs to the discussion. We have escalating water use for agriculture. Some 70+% of the withdrawals, global withdrawals, are used for agriculture. The percentage has been going down a bit. Actually, in one year it was 69%, so not 70 anymore. But because of the overall withdrawal is increasing, therefore also the input of agriculture into that increasing withdrawal has been increasing constantly. If you look at the highest withdrawals are in low middle income countries. In some countries, including the Nile Basin, it's far more than 80%. In Central Asian countries, it's more than 90% of all the withdrawals actually go to agriculture. Irrigation is one of the solutions. We mentioned that before, and irrigation has been increasing in many countries worldwide, and largely actually still in the high and higher middle income countries, not so much in the real low income countries. You see here the area equipped for irrigation. Of course, there are some countries with, like the Nile Basin, where you have thousands of years of experience in irrigation and a very clearly defined corridor for that. And Amgat will explain that later to us. But there's not so much change in intensification probably possible, because it's hardly any rainfall anywhere in some of these circumstances. But overall, it is still little if you look at the global distribution. More than 70% of the global distribution for irrigated service is in Asia, and in sub-Saharan Africa, it's less than 5%. Yeah, and often also surface water oriented, and groundwater is highly underutilized. Studies of IMI colleagues have demonstrated that particularly groundwater can still provide a lot of scope for intensification. I skipped this figure. I'm running a little bit out of time, and I want to say something about water productivity improvement. That can be done through a number of things, including breeding, biotechnology, investments in better application procedures, better water storage, soil water practices, etc., as well as economic and policy instruments. And it's the doing these investments on the ground, as well as sometimes the value of information is also empowering. There's an interesting study our colleagues have been doing in Ethiopia, again, a bit biased to Ethiopian examples for today. And what has been shown by better measuring soil moisture in the field, and then more in a better informed way, using this information for irrigating or not, or just doing that in a more precise way, it has been shown that while people were able to save fuel and fertilizer as well as irrigation water by doing this more in a better informed way, it has still increased the yields. So by conserving resources, it was still possible to increase the yields through better information, through better access to information. Interesting is also that not only the farmer who were equipped with better moisture measurement devices, also the farmers next door, or the farmers in the same region, which didn't have directly the access to information, but still could see what the better informed farmers were doing, and therefore had still higher yields than on controlled areas where there was no information at all. So the value of information to better behavior is clear. Having better water productivity does not always really need to conservation of resources. This cartoon is illustrating the so-called Jefferson Paradox, which in agricultural water management is often used as irrigation paradox, meaning more efficient irrigation technology does not necessarily save water. So what farmers often do with the additional water that becomes available with being more efficient is they further develop irrigation sites. They use the water for more intensive crops or expanding irrigated areas. So it's not saving necessarily water. So that is an important consideration that we need to have. The same is true for fuel efficient cars. Having more fuel efficient cars usually doesn't help to conserve fuel and keeping the fuel in the ground in fuel rich countries. No, it actually we continuously have been increasing our hunger for fossil fuel. Water storage is another important part. Water storage in reservoirs as well as in nature-based storages. And I have to come to the end. Do I understand that correctly? I want to skip the water storage part. And just one last point. If we look at agriculture water management solutions, we have to distinguish between different scales. And if we look from the crop to the field, to the farm, to the catchment, to the region scale, we have very specific methodologies and solutions at the crop scale, which is driven by different parameters and drivers. Then it is the field scale or the farm scale, etc. So we have to be very clear with our interventions where we interact, and sometimes in the literature this is a bit of mix of methodology and scale. And we also have to realize that we have different actors, objectives, and barriers and incentives for certain behaviors that are very different in different scales, and we shouldn't mix that up to really target behavioral change and target scaling of our interventions to in a successful way. I hope I stayed the time. I think I went 2 minutes over, and I'm looking forward to the other presentations. Thank you so much, Amare. Over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. This is really very enlightening presentations. We moved from really the water supply, food system interfaces, and the linkage with poverty, food insecurity, and the climate change issues, and also trend in water availability. And probably more importantly, the insight you gave us in terms of possible solutions are really very rich. The issue of optimization along the value chain, and the issue of yield gap that we have to try to tap into, and water productivity from capturing water, storing to delivering on farms, and the different technology. I think the issue of scale, I feel this is really extremely very nice insight, and triggers so much number of questions. I encourage all participants to put your question and answer in Q&A. Then either we address during the panel discussion or could be answered also live directly. So with this brief summary, I would like to thank Stefan once again, and would like to call upon the next speaker, Dr. Samu Ayali-Umogas. Thank you. The floor is yours, Samu.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear and loud.
Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet, Samu.
How about now?
Yes, it is there.
Okay. Is that?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, session presenters, Amara and Dr. Abdul Karim. And I would like to send my congratulations for NDBI organizers persistently organizing this session for 6 times. My today's talk is on rethinking cooperative irrigation management in the Nile Basin, and how do we proceed by expanding irrigation in the basin, as well as saving water in the basin. So there has to be a way that sustainable irrigation development or agricultural development in the Nile Basin should pave a way for cooperation. I would start from a broader perspective that Stefan also alluded. Most of the drivers of agriculture in the whole world is mostly population, and most of the agricultural expansion in the world is exclusively coming from developing countries. As you can see, FAO presented, and many World Bank also presented, most of agricultural development occurs in developing countries. This is mainly because of mostly population. As you can see, comparatively, Sub-Saharan Africa would have a tremendous population expansion over the coming 30 years. It doubles more than from 780 to 1.7 billion population. When we come to Nile Basin, it's almost the same trend. You can see the population currently of Nile Basin is close to 550 million. By 2050, it goes into close to 1 billion. So you can see here is also more than doubles. So population would be the main driver for agriculture expansion in Africa and also in the Nile Basin. So what it means is the region needs more food. That has implication on water demand. And the second driver of agriculture expansion is climate change. Also, Stefan already alluded, climate change have different forms. It can be displayed in terms of average. It is likely that the average climate precipitation would slightly increase. Precipitation obviously increase, but the most important part is the frequency of droughts and floods would increase in Africa, and at the same time, the unpredictability of climate change also affects the way we respond to change. Therefore, FAO study indicates because of the climate change, yield decline might be the order of the day during climate change. So in sub-Saharan Africa, there might be a decline in 5 to 20% of yield decline in terms of production. That adds up more into, requiring storage, so that enhance predictability in terms of available water, in terms of supplementary irrigation and main irrigation. So these are the most important drivers, and of course, because of economic growth and well-beingness in Africa and many developing countries, we know that this requires additional food, energy, and water supply. So as a result, we are increasingly tending into water shortage. These are some of our uncertainty predictions that has been done by our colleagues over a long time ago. Now, what is the trend in irrigated agriculture? This is a compilation of 2015 baseline and also updated in 3 years. In 2015 baseline, there is an update shows that increase in total crop irrigation from 6 million to 8 million, and equipped area in the Nile Basin also shows a modest increase. That is an indication of an unstoppable increase in terms of irrigation in the Nile Basin. Recently, we did with IMI that assessment of, I think Kiran would allude on this, potential irrigation area so far in the Nile Basin is close to 10 million, including water requirement as input. But generally, we found out that the potential land suitable for irrigation in the Nile Basin would be close to 50 million. So you can see there is a huge land that can be irrigated, and at the same time, the shortage of water can be traced in the Nile Basin. And this last graph shows how irrigation, it is a FAO study showing the likely increase of irrigation per annum in different countries of the Nile Basin. In some countries, increase would go as far as 2% per annum. And in some countries, you can see in already developed countries in Sudan and Egypt would be slightly less than that. So we did different studies on irrigation projection based on the Nile Basin data we have. Somebody, can you switch off your, can you mute please? Lul, yeah, thank you. So this, we took different approaches of projection based as usual projection. We have different projection on the basis of business as usual, on the basis of different variants of development that takes into regions, let's say regional approach based on African predicted irrigation growth and different. So what we found out is that there will be an increase in irrigation, even though the irrigation increase will not go beyond the potential irrigation area available in terms of FAO projection as well as in the suitability. As you can see, this is the different irrigation projection in the Nile Basin between 10 million and in the business as usual, of course, it would stay within 6 to 7 million area. So this means in terms of water consumption, where we have less water or scarcity of water in the Nile Basin, there is a need how this potential irrigation would be developed cooperatively and jointly. Now, the other part that is mostly overlooked in the Nile Basin is the water loss aspect of irrigation. We know 98% of irrigation usually exists in the arid part of the Nile Basin in Egypt and Sudan. And most of these irrigation systems are largely gravity systems, open channel systems with a lot of water losing. And some studies showed that as much as 40 billion meter cube of water could be saved from these extensive 40 to 50,000 kilometer canals that exists in the Nile Basin. So this is an opportunity to save water in the Nile Basin. Of course, the other is the efficiency of most of the systems, especially in Sudan, shows that it is less efficient, giving opportunity to more efficient practice in the basin. In the low riparian countries, irrigation development is not significant, so the future development should attain that level of efficiency, so that as population increases and climate change impact increases, we cannot afford to develop irrigation the way as business as usual. So the next developments, whether in lower riparian countries or in the upper riparian countries, should be a state of the art with high saving mechanism and smart agriculture. So with this, we explore different options of water saving. How can we save water in the Nile Basin? We have a lot of water. We have a lot of wasted water. We have different cropping patterns that should be, modified. So we identified 5 areas of water saving so that the region cooperatively think in terms of improving this. One is, as Amara and also Stephen showed, intensification of rain-fed agriculture has significant component in reducing irrigated agriculture. Many of upstream, upper riparian countries who has plenty of rainfall can enhance productivity through small ponds, small scale irrigation, and through fertilizer application, technology application. So the more irrigated agriculture is intensified, the more farmers, would tend to focus on increasing productivity on that area. Once we have security in terms of food and water, I think people would not go for the sake of irrigation. People go for the sake of food production. So it will turn into that area. Improving water use efficiency, as I showed, is one of the areas that can be achieved cooperatively. It has to be traced, it has to be monitored in the region, and every drop of water should matter. And improving cropping patterns. Some of the most water intensive crops are grown in highly arid areas where evaporation is high. So that kind of cropping patterns could be, if there is regional thinking in the Nile Basin, we can have those crops with high water consumption can be grown in less evaporation area, and vice versa. The other is, we have also found out that many studies in the lower riparian countries of Egypt and Sudan showed that deficit irrigation with a small, as low as 80% application of water, their yield reduction is not so significant. So that is also an area where it requires more study and more understanding, so that implementation of deficit irrigation would also add additional water to the system as we proceed into 2050. Of course, the last water saving mechanism is joint operation of reservoirs in the system. The system should talk to each other. The reservoirs should talk to each other. You can save more water during summer where evaporation is lower in the upland countries. You can release more water during the dry part of water in the upland countries. In summer where the evaporation less in upland countries, in Sudan and Egypt, that's high temperature and high evaporation season. So you can make arrangements that the multi-reservoirs of irrigation can talk to each other through coordination and cooperation. That would actually save more water. So we did study recently, it's not yet published. We took some of this understanding and put it in a model and found out that if we can save 20% of the water through these mechanisms, we found out that most of the irrigation in the Nile Basin can actually be sustainably developed. This paper we are trying to publish with water management policy paper. So I think there is an option that if strictly there is cooperation and understanding and agreement, the irrigation potential as FAO presented would be sustainably developed in the Nile Basin. What are the cooperative sustainable development mechanisms? One is the region has to agree on noble principles of water is life for everybody. It's a human right issue, and every individual in the Nile Basin should be able to access a minimum water that's guaranteed by human rights criteria in the UN. That should be the baseline for everybody. An Egyptian, Ethiopian, Ugandan, everybody has a right for this. This understanding should be inculcated in the region. Second, we should understand fresh water is finite, and this finite resource requires management, it requires protection. That's only possible when there is cooperation in the basin. And the third is, water is, unlike other mineral resource, is dynamic. It moves, it connects society, it brings society close. Then cooperation and adaptive mechanism should be a way forward because of these inherent characteristics of water resource. So these are the principles. Once we understand the principle in the region, how do we go about development and management in the Nile Basin? We propose a cooperative sustainable development approach, which is progressive water management and development strategy. What does it mean? It means that it's not a possible scenario that countries start irrigation at once and constrain water resource in the downstream countries. So what do? We can do a progressive management approach and a progressive development concretely once we have cooperation. We can say in the first stage, we can have agreed solution in terms of how development occurs in the region. We can have some of the legal instruments developed already. In the next step, we can go into understanding how much of irrigation we can save from wasted water and how much of water can be developed, irrigation can be developed in the upper riparian countries where there is no yet development. So through this mechanism, slowly and progressively, we can unlock more water from wasted irrigation, and we can also cooperatively develop more irrigation in other parts of the basin where there was no development. In this way, we can attain a stage where the elastic limit of water management is attained. At the same time, the elastic limit of irrigation development reached. With that, we can have a happy cooperative family in the Nile Basin and smart agriculture in this basin, in this Nile Basin is a way forward. In this way, of course, we need to have borderless institutions, mechanisms and instruments that see Nile as a holistic and one river basin. But of course, we cannot go this without only thinking about water. During this process, we need also to develop parallel economic cooperation. As we expand economic cooperation and collaboration, then the water issue becomes part of ingrained in that economic cooperation. The more trade we have, the more linkage road and economic linkage we have, then the water issue becomes ingrained in that, and disconnecting this region in terms of and entering into conflict becomes less and less possible. You can see how Rhine River in Europe and many countries, Mexico and US, because of this economic cooperation is by far greater than the value of water, then you cannot usually see this conflict coming up. So I think this is a way forward for also enhancing investment, cooperative investment, joint investment in irrigation, in hydropower, and different infrastructure projects in the Nile Basin would actually bring less and less conflict and more cooperative growth in the region. In conclusion, I think irrigated agriculture is part of unstoppable development countries phenomena because of the drivers that me and Stefan also showed. It's part of expanding population and climate change. So we have to take it, accept it as reality, and we have to give to that cooperation. Implementation of progressive water development and management or saving is a pathway forward for sustainable development of the Nile Basin. I think this is very important. Countries cannot develop all of their resource within a couple of 5-6 years. There has to be a redig between the countries. In that way, also they can unlock finance jointly for water management, at the same time water development. So in modeling we have this demonstrated that 20% water saving from current large-scale irrigation guarantees sustainable development in irrigation in the Nile Basin. And I think we have to stress cooperative irrigation management in the Nile Basin. Thank you very much. I think I have finished my presentation.
Thanks, Dr. Samu. This is really a very interesting insight. I think all the audience can use the opportunities, the different, issue you raised to trigger more discussion points. We have seen as Stefan did, the driver here, and the current trend of irrigation and the projections, what it looks like using different scenarios. Samu really underscored the level of efficiency of irrigation across countries, across topology, let me call it that way. And the proposal of saving option even makes this really keynote speech more practical. Rain-fed intensification and water use efficiency. By the way, rain-fed intensification, we had one webinar full last on 12th of April. It was quite interesting. What we tried to capture there is the link, the continuum of rain-fed irrigation rather than looking at irrigation itself. So this Dr. Samu's slide really substantiate that discussion. And the cropping pattern, deficit irrigation, basin water supply management, more importantly and broadly. I think the issue you put forward this as principle is also quite essential. And finally, progressive water management. What really came again here we had another webinar on the 1st of April. What was mentioned is that we have to also bring in non-water solution to water problem, which is economic cooperative you mentioned. So it's very interesting. I encourage again all the participants to put your question and the answers, which either the presenters directly address live or would be handled during the panel discussion. Thanks, Dr. Samu again. Let's move to the next speaker, Kiran Chandraskhan from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Is working at International Water Management Institute. He has geography, MSc in geography from University of Mathura, India. I've worked extensively in land use analysis and irrigated area mapping using remote sensing. He will present to us mapping land suitability for irrigation in Nile Basin. Kiran, you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Amare. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see. Make it on presentation mode. Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks again, and good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, I would like to share the results of our study on mapping land suitability for irrigation in the Nile Basin. So the spatial information about land suitability is an essential input to irrigation development and planning. The irrigation suitability as such do not have a standard definition applicable in all scenarios. Actually, it is often estimated as a combination of factors such as land suitability, water availability, economic viability, and socioeconomic factors and many other environmental factors also considered when one go and assess the irrigation suitability. However, many studies assess the land suitability as a precursor to before moving into more complex analysis. Also as a regional scale resource assessment to get a broad overview. So FAO actually suggests an initial classification of land suitability would be beneficial, even without complete information about water availability or development in the initial stages. So following this approach, the scope of the study was to assess the present land suitability for irrigation in the Nile Basin. So the analysis was based only on the physical properties of the land. And we did not consider the water availability or infrastructure or socioeconomic factors for this analysis. So essentially the study is to identify the level of land suitability for the basin, provided if water can be supplied. What is the condition of the land? That was the primary question. And the results are presented according to the categories suggested in FAO framework for land suitability assessment. The FAO's suitability classification basically categorize the land in a suitability scale which ranges from permanently not suitable to highly suitable. So it suggests 5 categories like highly suitable, moderately suitable, and marginally suitable. These 3 together constitute the suitable land, and currently not suitable and permanently not suitable together form the not suitable category. The highly suitable category has no limitations to the sustained application of irrigation, where the moderately suitable and marginally suitable categories has increasing levels of limitations, which may reduce the physical productivity and benefits, or it may have higher costs compared to the highly suitable land. The currently not suitable category have limitations which may be resolvable in future, but cannot be corrected with existing knowledge at a currently acceptable cost. And permanently not suitable category have severe limitations which preclude all possibilities of successful use of the land for irrigation. So this slide shows the overview of the methods we followed for the analysis. The land suitability was evaluated by assessing the soil and terrain suitability for irrigation. The soil suitability was assessed from a set of soil properties. I have another slide which lists out the factors we used. So each of the soil factors was converted into a soil factor suitability map. And the factor suitability maps were aggregated using a multi-criteria evaluation to come up with a composite soil suitability index. And terrain suitability was derived from the topographic slope. So the terrain and soil suitabilities were aggregated to come up with the final land suitability for irrigation in the basin. The assessment was done only within the croplands. So the extent of the current extent of croplands in Nile Basin was input as a constraint, because beyond that the assessment was not done. This shows the terrain suitability map of a small region zoomed in. So we used the SRTM digital elevation model as an input data, and then derived slope out of the DEM, converted it into suitability classes by applying a set of thresholds. Similarly, for the soil suitability, the factors used for evaluating soil suitability is listed in the box. So that we used these 8 soil properties, and each of these soil property was classified into a suitability class based on thresholds or other criteria. And the composite soil suitability index was developed by combining the suitability of each factor through the multi-criteria evaluation. So the final land suitability mapping was done by combining the terrain suitability and soil suitability maps. So if you look at the maps, I hope it is clear. The highly suitable category, which is in the purple color, it's mostly found in the delta region or in the northern part. In the other areas, it is there, but in a relatively small patches and fragmented. Where the moderately suitable category, the green color, it's found extensively in some regions. We can also see a large area categorized as permanently not suitable. So this table shows the area estimations based on the land suitability classification. The countries are shown in the descending order according to the total suitable area. Sudan has the highest area, around 20 million hectare. And the total land suitability of Nile Basin is estimated as 50 million hectare, close to 50 million hectare. However, if you look at the highly suitable area, it is only 7.5 million hectare is categorized as a highly suitable area, which is around 10% of the total croplands in the basin. So within the area classified as suitable, majority of the area falls in the moderately suitable category. That's around 33% of the croplands falling in the moderately suitable category. We also have to note that around 30% of the croplands is categorized as permanently not suitable for irrigation. So here the chart on the left-hand side shows the proportion of land suitability within the croplands. That is almost 50% of, for the most of the countries, around 50% of the land is coming into the total suitable area, with South Sudan and Egypt and all have a higher area within the suitable classes. But if you look at the right-hand side with the chart which shows the proportion of suitability classes within the suitable area, you can see that the highly suitable area occupies, the highly suitable class occupies only a small percentage. For most of the countries, it is less than 20% is categorized as highly suitable, except Egypt. Egypt has around 60% of the land category of the suitable area falling in the highly suitable category. So we also looked at the land availability for future irrigation development. So we basically assess how much of the suitable land is already under irrigation. So in the highly suitable area, almost 23% is already under irrigation, and we can see that 77% of the highly suitable land is still in the rain-fed category. Similarly, for the moderately suitable and marginally suitable areas also, the irrigated land is only a small percentage. It's only around 12% is currently irrigated, and the rain-fed category is 88% is in the rain-fed category. So that that shows a lot of possibilities for the future expansion of irrigation in the basin. So coming to the conclusions, this study basically estimated different levels of land suitability for irrigation without considering the water availability. So it basically looked at how suitable is the land if water can be supplied. It also eliminated land that is permanently not suitable. And since land suitability is a relatively stable condition compared to seasonal water availability or socioeconomic conditions, this data can be used as a baseline for future assessments. And I think it would be useful as a baseline data. And to convert the land suitability estimations came up through the study, to convert it to irrigation suitability, we need to look at various aspects of seasonal water availability and economic feasibility. Those successive refinements using additional criteria would actually further reduce the land area identified as suitable in this current analysis. So some of the recommendations we have is if new irrigation schemes may be planned in accordance with the land suitability evaluations to maximize the benefits. Also, since the highly suitable land is only around 10% of the cropland, it would be good to develop appropriate policies to regulate the conservation of that land to non-agricultural land users. Also, it would be good to include the information on land suitability for irrigation as an input to the regional land use policy development process. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Kiran. I appreciate really your contribution. I think you took us through a number of information. I feel this contribution is an important contribution totally because it updated the FAO relatively well old, let me call it that way, land suitability. Given the recent development, particularly in digital elevation models and the satellite imageries and access to global data on soil chemistry, I think this has improved the data set on land suitability substantially. Thanks for that. Thanks also for bringing the understanding how this supports future policy direction. And with that, I would like to call upon the next speaker, Mr. Paul Ayala, Senior Irrigation Drainage Engineer. Currently a PhD student from Ministry of Agriculture, Uganda. And his background is irrigation and drainage engineering. He will present on analysis of water management for high productivity in largely paddy irrigation schemes. So with this brief introduction, I would like to call Paul.
Yes.
For his use, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to look through my share screen. I can see the option for sharing the screen.
The bottom of your Zoom screen.
Okay, I got it. Sorry. Oh. I don't know what's
there is a green tab down at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I got it, but
you opened already your file, right?
Yes.
Okay. Or did you change any of your slide content? I can share it for you if you like.
I changed briefly.
Is there any change?
I changed.
We went through the test and you did it very well. What has happened now?
It's coming, I think. It's coming.
Probably you can maybe share from there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Sorry.
Okay, there you go. Good.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, I start. Thank you very much. I am Paul Ayala, and I work with the Ministry of Agriculture in Uganda. I'm also a PhD student at the University of Tsukuba in Japan. My topic is on analysis of water management for high productivity in large paddy irrigation schemes in Uganda. I work with two irrigation engineers, Professor Ishii and Professor Sato, both of Tsukuba University. As my background, here is fundamental effective water management and irrigation project. What is it? It's to maximize total products in the irrigation project area. Equitable water distribution for each field is necessary, as asserted by Sato. But practically, upstream takes more water, leading to inequitable water distribution, which leads to less total yield, rendering irrigation very ineffective. The problem is how to realize the equitable water distribution in irrigation projects. Governments and international organizations recommend water users association through the use of PIM with the hopes of equal water and high total productivity. But are these systems really working in developing countries? To answer these questions, we did a comparative analysis on the impacts of water management system on water distribution and total productivity. Specifically, we assessed the impacts of water management system on water distribution and total yield, and suggested the necessary conditions for equal water distribution by the participatory irrigation management method. To tackle this, we chose two irrigation schemes in Uganda which are drawing water from the same earthworks having a similar area. Both were developed in the 1980s. One is a PIM system called Doho irrigation system, which is democratic, and the other one is an autocratic system, which uses a top-down system managed by only one landlord, which is hiring land to 1,700 farmers. The government system is 1,000 acre PIM, and it has 3,868 farmers. With this, these are two schemes which are located in the same area, just opposite the river, but they have similar climate, soil, and water resources, but there is substantial difference between the rice yield in the two systems. That's reported by the Ministry of Agriculture. What drove this research is why the yields are different under similar conditions. In this, we did our surveys between July and August of 2017 using a questionnaire to establish the factors that influence rice system, rice yield in both of the irrigation schemes through the use of questionnaires. Also, with the interviews of the people responsible for managing the water resources, the landlord on the other side and the government officials on the PIM side, we were able to establish the water management structures of the WUAs and the activities which takes place for water management. In our results and discussions, we found that the rice yield and the affecting factors almost the same on either sides of both the PIM system and the top-down system, the autocratic one. The systems, the things that we found which were really different substantially between the PIM system and the autocratic system, we found that the water satisfaction in the autocratic system is so good, and there's also a higher fertilizer use in the autocratic system, and also the yield of rice in the autocratic system is higher than the yield in the PIM system. With this, we were driven to ask more questions. Why is it yield fertilizer use is higher in the autocratic system than in the PIM system, also coupled with a better water satisfaction in the autocratic system than the PIM system? So we asked, why is lower yield in PIM lower than the top-down lower system? Is it fertilizer use or unstable water condition? And it's globally known fertilizer use improves yield, but why is it that amidst this knowledge, the PIM system is relaxed is to use fertilizer? We did a correlation between water supply and fertilizer use in the PIM system, because it's the PIM system, we want to see how to try to improve. When we did a t-test at 95% significant level, we found a very strong correlation between water satisfaction and fertilizer use. That means unstable water distribution leads to less fertilizer use. Also, unstable water distribution leads to less yield directly. And less fertilizer use in turn also leads to less yield. Now, with this, we inferred that the core problem here is unstable water distribution, because it leads to a yield reduction in two directions through use of less fertilizer and directly. This means farmers are reluctant to use fertilizer when the yield, they are unsure of water availability on their plots. Now, we had to dig deep and see where is the poor water distribution in the PIM system. In Doho, was it between the blocks or inside the blocks? In between the blocks, we found that the rotational irrigation exists, and so equitable distribution is achieved, because this rotational schedule was developed by farmers and is followed fairly by the farmers, which means they're achieving a level of equity. And then we moved inside the block to assess satisfaction based on farmers' location. With this, we assessed the geospatial location of the farmers and how they are satisfied in terms of water. This were the geospatial location of farmers and their water satisfaction with relation to the last terminal canal that supplies the plots. And in this, we found if we were to plot the water satisfaction of farmers, this is the plot number from down upstream to downstream, and this is the last terminal canal numbers from upstream. 0 means upstream, the highest means downstream. In the PIM system, as we move along the plots on the last terminal canal, we found that as you move downstream, the satisfaction in water, the water unsatisfaction grew. Farmers are less satisfaction with the water supply, which means the farmers upstream in the PIM system draws water with impunity without any repercussion, like control is less. But in the autocratic system, we found that the distribution of unsatisfaction is in an uncoordinated way. It means that water satisfaction is achieved everywhere, whether downstream or upstream. And in this, we infer that the autocratic system is good at enforcing fair water distribution with all the farmers. Now, this prompted us to dig deeper and find what is the problem in the PIM method in the DOE irrigation scheme with respect to water management. We looked at the basic water management structures, and we found that in both of the systems, the basic water management structures from at the scheme level up to the field level is similar. In this, the left one is the autocratic system. We found it's the top person is the CEO, which is also the landowner. The top person here is the farmers chairman elected by all farmers. The CEO here appoints all the managers by himself because he's the landlord, and all these appointed people are his close confidants. And he has a big family of around 36 kids. And a special feature, he allocates one of his kids as a resident farmer in each of the blocks. The role of this kid is to act as a feedback mechanism to get first-hand information. With this two, this one is all democratically elected, and technical backstopped by only 2 government officials, which helps the elected chairman. With these 2 systems, you can see in the left system, the stability in the yield increases directly the finance of the CEO at the top, because all the farmers can be able to pay their land rent and the water fee. But here, the top person has no direct incentive to enforce the water distribution effectively. And so there's lack of strong incentive and power to distribute water equitably. And so we went to see also the monitoring and the feedback mechanism in both of the systems. And we found that in the 2 systems, the feedback mechanism is totally very different. In the autocratic system, the CEO appoints what is called the inspector, which is his close confidant, a friend, and a family relative that has to survey all the entire scheme the whole day and report to him on how water management is going. And also the resident farmer who is his son in each block, his work is to report on a daily basis on how water distribution is done and decision is taken swiftly. But in the PIM system, it's the typical bureaucratic system where the farmer's chairman only gets to know what is happening at the farmer's level from the block level. The block chairman only interfaces with the strip leader, which is the strip is the last terminal canal, and the strip leader interfaces with the farmer at the plot level. In this, the autocratic system has a very strong monitoring and feedback mechanism to correct any error in water distribution compared to this, which is powered by the need to have stability in yield and hence income for the top person. In conclusion, we found that same conditions, but yield differs between 10 to 20% due to equitable water and fertilizer application in the autocratic system than in the PIM system. Unlike the autocratic lower bar, in the PIM DOHO, water is equally shared to individual blocks, but not individual paddy fields. The top-down control in lower bar has a strong motivation and power to maximize the revenue through fair water distribution. As a policy implication for rethinking the investment in the Nile Basin, for increased overall productivity, equitable water sharing is key at farm, block, and the watershed level. And the fundamental question next was to ask, what are the strong incentives and power that can drive equitable water sharing in the participatory irrigation management method, which is highly being promoted by governments and international organizations at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Paul Ayala. I liked how you showed us the issue of equity and the issue of performance of difference in performance of democratic and autocratic irrigation management approach. Without going into much detail, this will really very simply give us an opportunity to learn from what's going on within, schemes and between schemes as a practice of irrigation benchmarking, which I'm sure we'll hear more from another presenter later today. Thanks a lot for your contribution. I will move to the next speaker, Dr. Tedros Hafasan from Bahar Dar University of Institute of Technology, Ethiopia, and his background is water resource engineering and management. He will present on impacts of conservation agriculture with drip irrigation in sub-humid Ethiopian highlands, an experiment and modeling studies. The floor is yours, Dr. Tedros. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Amara. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So this afternoon, I will be presenting pathways to improve crop and water productivity in the Blue Nile Basin. And this is findings from an experiment and modeling. So as we all know, agricultural practice is basically in Ethiopia traditional tillage, and it is dependent on rainfall. However, climate variability.
Go on display settings. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so the agricultural practice here in Ethiopia is mostly traditional tillage and dependent on rainfall. However, climate variability and also poor management of soil and water resulted in loss of soil fertility and decline of crop productivity. So farmers, they usually take their own way to tackle this challenge, and they took extensification approach that is maximizing agricultural area at the cost of forest, plantation, and grassland. And this is also aggravating further soil degradation. So the approach that we used in this study was intensification approach. Intensification was also recommended during the keynote speaker, but what does intensification mean? So various intensification pathways might be used, but for this case, we use improving water use efficiency and also treating the soil through conservation agriculture to improve productivity. So we use groundwater source for this irrigated agriculture or irrigated production, and farmers in the study area were using just rope and bucket to pull up water from the groundwater, from the shallow groundwater. They use it mostly for domestic purpose because it is, labor demanding to do it for irrigation. And then we improved that one to a modified pulley system. And now we are experimenting on solar-based shallow groundwater irrigation. And we are evaluating this approach in terms of various sustainability paths, including productivity, environment, and economics. I will be going through economic and environmental evaluation of this intensification approach that we have been doing in our experiment. So we had a PRT experiment to compare, in this case, conservation agriculture practice with the conventional tillage practice that farmers are doing. Conservation agriculture in this case is defined as minimum soil disturbance and application of organic mulch cover on the top of the soil and diverse cropping through time. So we are proposing, or our hypothesis in this case is the conservation practice will reduce significant amount of water loss that is happening from evaporation during dry season, as well as minimize runoff loss during rainy season, and improve yield due to addition of nutrients to the soil because of the biological decomposition of the organic mulch cover. In the traditional till system, with the application of traditional water application, again, the net irrigation requirement is computed through work rule recommendations that is a function of crop evapotranspiration, crop coefficient, evapotranspiration, and net effective rainfall. So this is considering about 60% irrigation application and efficiency. And in the net irrigation requirement computation in terms of conservation agriculture practice, we introduced another coefficient that is a coefficient to account for the water saving of conservation agriculture, which varies between 0.5 to 0.8, depending on the various types of crops and vegetables grown in the study area. So this is one of the findings, that is crop yield or crop productivity. When we compare conservation practice with conventional tillage, you can see that we have got a significant improvement for dry season irrigated vegetable production. You can see the percentage improvement under CA, that is conservation agriculture. for garlic, cabbage, and potato, and as well as the rain-fed improvement of yield due to the application of conservation agriculture. That is an improvement of yield, that is a corn yield under conservation practice. This is a water productivity improvement. This is the amount of yield that we can produce per unit volume of water. So in this case, we have also got a significant improvement or a significant improvement of water productivity, meaning a significant irrigation need reduction for the various vegetables that you can see here for garlic, cabbage, and potato. So with a significant water saving amount, we have got a significant improvement of yield under conservation agriculture. This is mainly because of two main reasons. One is the addition of soil nutrients to the addition of nutrients to the soil due to the biological decomposition of organic mulch cover, and the consistent provision of soil moisture under the conservation agriculture to the crop. This is also a comparison between overhead farmers irrigation application and drip irrigation application in terms of water productivity as well as crop productivity. This is also the water requirement for the traditional watering overhead watering, considering 60% inefficiency, and this is net irrigation requirement of drip irrigation considering 10% inefficiency. So as a result, we have got also a significant improvement of crop yield under irrigated agriculture for potato and onion, only with the application of drip irrigation as compared to the overhead farmers' traditional practice. This is in terms of crop productivity, and this is in terms of water productivity of the same vegetables. We have got a significant improvement of water productivity for potato and onion as well. This is basically due to the uniform distribution of water under drip irrigation directly to the root of the crop instead of putting water everywhere with the farmer's traditional water application practice. And the third scenario is a combination of conservation practice with drip irrigation. So in this case, we have combined conservation practice under drip irrigation, and also compare this with traditional tillage system with overhead irrigation. In this case, we have considered irrigation inefficiency of drip as well as the water saving capability of conservation practice ranging for the various vegetables. So for this experiment as well, we have got a significant improvement of crop yield as well as water availability or water productivity for garlic. As you can see, the percentage is very high when we combine conservation agriculture with drip irrigation. So this is basically, we are taking advantage of the water saving capacity of drip irrigation as well as the water saving capacity of conservation practice. And similarly, we are taking advantage of adding soil nutrient from the organic mulch cover for the conservation practice and maintaining consistent provision of water for the soil, for the plant under the conservation practice. So we also observed a difference in terms of crop coefficient when we see conservation practice and conventional tillage. If you can see from the graph, for example, if you see the red is for garlic under conservation practice, whereas the black line is for the same crop garlic under conventional tillage practice. Similarly for cabbage, the green area is, the green line is, the purple line is for cabbage under conservation agriculture, whereas the blue is for cabbage under conservation agriculture. And that is an indication of 10 to 20% reduction in crop coefficient. This has an indication of an opportunity for to use further water saving approach like deficit irrigation in terms of using the combined approach of drip and conservation practice. And this is from soil laboratory result and also modeling approach. From the right hand side, you can see that this is a percentage change of the soil parameter under conservation practice. We have increased organic matter in the soil, available phosphorus, total nitrogen, and organic carbon were increased. And similarly, the water saving capacity of these two approach is also shown from the modeling result. We have significantly reduced evapotranspiration. This is because most of the evapotranspiration loss during irrigation is from the soil evaporation. And when you have a mulch cover on the soil, that will reduce significantly the amount of water loss through evaporation. Similarly, reduced water loss from runoff. In turn, we increased the groundwater recharge and also decrease the irrigation water requirement. And the picture is showing the soil to see in the cup of water if it can withstand the water in the cup of here in the cup, to see the nutrient addition and also the comprehensive so when you have a soil nutrient added to the soil, so there is a glue attaching the soil particles so that the nutrients are not washed away during rainy season or during irrigation from the water. So from the left side, you can see that the conservation agriculture practice has a clean water within the cup of this water, whereas in the conventional stage, the totally diluted here. So indicating that the soil nutrient will be lost during rainy season, as well as if you have high level of irrigation like flooding. So as a key message that we have seen, we have got that small scale irrigation. We have used shallow groundwater well with a solar pump. Together with drip irrigation and conservation agriculture, it really works in improving crop yield as well as water productivity. And the way forward that I can see and need to be considered is how we can scale up those practices and technologies. So we know that there are a lot of barriers in terms of reaching out farmers with technologies, and including access to water. And also there are also barriers in terms of getting organic mulch cover for the entire land when we have lots of, when we have a larger area. So looking for the pathways to scale up for these practices. So policy indication need to be also reconsider such approach for intensification of crop and water productivity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Tedros. It is very interesting contribution. I think I'm particularly linking up the whole irrigation practice from water sourcing, lifting, delivery, and on-farm management in terms of the whole mulching. I think the whole integrated approach as a package is where we can enhance complementarity between different interventions to gain more in water saving as well as yield. So thank you. I think this will trigger more interesting questions from participants. Please, I encourage you to put your questions on question and answers chat. And the presenter, the speaker, I also encourage you to answer live. With this, I will call upon the next speaker, Dr. Fisum Hagos. Fisum, are you there? Yes, I can see you. Dr. Fisum is working at the International Water Management Institute based in Ethiopia. He is an economist with a number of focused research on environmental economics, institution and policy, and the socio-economic studies. His contribution today will be on economic value of water for irrigation in Nile Basin. Dr. Fisum, you have 10 minutes and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amara. Good afternoon. I would like to thank for the opportunity to present this paper. I'm glad that the presentations from Stefan, Semu, Dr. Theodos were quite useful for many of the issues that I will be talking about. As a background, I would like to mention that agriculture is very important in the Nile Basin, where 87% is contributed using rainfed agriculture. The remaining 30% is irrigated, where 97% is located in Egypt, and the remaining 3% in other countries. Agriculture is the single largest water consumer. As you know, globally, 70% of the fresh water is consumed by agriculture. And this has like 78% of the water withdrawal of the peak flow of Nile at one is used for agriculture. I think, as it was mentioned in other presentations, many upstream and downstream countries plan irrigation development. This has implications on water demand and may not be made by the already available water unless it's, sorry.
Sorry, I think it was not audible, so I changed the speaker. And to come back to the presentation, I think many downstream and upstream countries to have new irrigation development. You need a model, which basically will increase the water demand. Many factors contribute to water scarcity.
Can you share your slides? Please share your slides.
It's shared, I think. Is this shared?
Not yet.
Okay. I think many factors contribute to water scarcity. As it was mentioned, inequitable distribution.
Fisum, we can't hear you. Share your slides. Share your PowerPoint slides.
It's, I think, shared. Guys, is this shared, Amara?
We still don't see At the bottom of the Zoom app, there is a green button, share screen, with an arrow.
Oh.
That's the one you should click.
Share this one. Oh. Sorry, guys, again. Now it's shared, I guess. Can someone confirm?
We hear you clearly, but we are not seeing your screen yet.
Sorry?
Yeah,
We
it's-
don't
it's
see your
not
screen.
there.
Okay. But I shared actually.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
ፍጹም ቆየኝ እኔ ከዚህ ሼር ላርግልህ።
እሺ all right.
አውጣው ያንተን።
Okay. Out አይደል? አማራ አማራ Okay.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Hello, ፍጹም።
Yes, I can see it.
Guide on which slide to go to.
ፍጹም
Go ahead. We see the screen now. If you talk, we'll be able to hear while we are seeing the slide as well.
ፍጹም can you see? Can you see your PowerPoint? ይሰማሃል እኔ?
Amara,
Yeah.
someone, why don't you move to the next and you can.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Fusum, let's move to the next speaker as Fusum will reorganize his PowerPoint. Thank you. Thank you all just for bearing with us. The next speaker will be Mr. Lul Kasai, consultant living in Addis Ababa, associated with IMI. He's an irrigation engineer by background. He will bring in idea on the need and approach for initiating benchmarking irrigation performance in the Nile Basin. Mr. Abdul, this is your time. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. Please continue.
Screen.
I share that. Share our
Slide from our scanning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Stop sharing. Oh, sorry. I'm Allah Antagao? Huh? Still. No, انشر رجال يفصم منور አለበት ፍጹም አንሼር አድርገው እስኪ አንተን ፓወርፖይንት አንሼር አድርገው
It's unshared. The screen is free to use. Dr. Mare, we still have the option of the video. Well, are you going to share your screen?
ቪዲዮ ስክሪን ማድረግ ትችላለህ Wow. ይሄ እንደገና ልምጣ አሁን አለ ነው አጥፋና እንደገና ገባ እንጂ እኔ ወጥቼ ነው የገባሁት። I'm sorry for the complication. I'm ቪዲዮን ረን ማድረግ ትችላለህ? Why don't you log out? ውጣ ካልኩ እንደገና አግባ። ያንተ በጣም እንትን እያለ ነው። ሌላ መጣ እዚህ ታውቃለህ። እሺ ረን አድርገው እስኪ። ልክ አይደለም።
We can see it finally.
Yes, put it in full slide mode.
Huh? You can't see? Okay.
We see it, yes. Put it in slide mode, slideshow mode. The button at the icon at the bottom of the screen. Amaria, we see the presentation, but it's not in slideshow mode. Just only put it in slideshow mode and Leo can go ahead.
Sorry, we don't hear you.
Your microphone is not enabled.
Watch for initiating benchmarking irrigation performance in the Nile Basin. The presentation outline includes definition of benchmarking, rationale for benchmarking, approach, challenges and limitations of benchmarking. Finally, recommendations. Benchmarking involves comparing actual or planned project practices to those of comparable projects or a predetermined standards. The aim is to identify best practices, identify general ideas for improvement, and provide a basis for measuring performance. In short, benchmarking is a tool for identifying performance gaps, closing gaps, and making continuous improvement. One of the drivers for benchmarking is prevailing low irrigation productivity in the Nile Basin. There is an example of maize yield from 1993 up to 2018. The figure shows three easily noticeable factors. First one is, for 25 years, average crop yield in the upstream Nile Basin countries was 1/6 to 1/2 of that of Egypt. Secondly, for 25 years, the difference in crop yield was almost constant. And thirdly, any attempt made by the upstream Nile Basin countries to improve productivity had no effect. Therefore, there is a need for the Nile Basin countries to start working differently, including to examine the competency of irrigation project managers. Irrigation scheme managers are mostly agronomists or engineers. Most of them could have high technical competency, but their competency as manager could be inadequate. This implies there is a need to equip irrigation project managers with the requisite management skills. The requisite management skills would involve the 10 project management knowledge areas and 49 project management processes. This presentation is related to knowledge area number 5, quality management, and 3 management processes, namely quality planning, quality assurance, and quality control, which are the domains for benchmarking. Quality is defined as meeting expectation or conformance to standards. Characteristics to be measured include land and water productivity, net revenue, environmental safety, irrigation efficiency, equity, and so on. There are a number of quality measuring tools and techniques. One of such tools is benchmarking. Now the approach for benchmarking. The proposed approach includes the following. Scheme managers should establish an effective documentation system. This is for recording farm activities, output, and explanation for any variance between planned and actual values. The purpose is to track best practices or constraints and subsequently make adjustments if necessary. Here are examples of farm activities to be recorded and then adjusted for performance improvement. First one is cropping program. It includes crop and variety selection, cropping pattern, cropping intensity, crop rotation, soil fertility management, crop protection, and so on. Second farm activity is irrigation water management, and it includes irrigation scheduling, water use efficiencies, drainage, and so on. Third farm activity may include operation and maintenance, and the fourth farming activity may include irrigation support services, which may include extension support, marketing support, and the like. Second approach would include that scheme managers should sensitize and mobilize project stakeholders for continuous improvement of quality. Third approach would include that scheme managers should adopt the PDCA cycle or plan, do, check, adjust cycle. It is one of the tools used for continuous quality improvement. Fourth approach includes that scheme managers should take full responsibility for quality improvement. They should ensure the correctness, completeness, and timeliness of data collection and analysis. They should check if the performance gap is closing or not. If not, they should identify the constraints and solutions, adjust the farm activities with the participation of stakeholders. There are some challenges that are anticipated with regard to benchmarking. First one is lack of interest to adopt quality management or benchmarking due to misunderstanding of the concept on how it works or the benefits it can offer. The possible solutions would be to address the issue through awareness raising and training, and to ensure that the process is institutionalized firmly within the scheme management culture. Second challenge would be lack or inadequacy of resources to implement benchmarking. Possible solutions would be to start small with few key indicators. The third challenge is difficulty of accessing benchmark data from another project. And this can be solved by using existing best practices and upper productivity limits established by local research agencies as standard. Fourth challenge is lack of water measurement practices in most of the irrigation schemes. And the possible solution would be that Nile Basin countries should have to address the factors constraining the measurement of water in irrigation schemes. My last slide on recommendations. Stakeholders are advised to consider the following policy statement and related strategies. The policy statement is promote and ensure the implementation of participatory irrigation management with built-in quality management system. The strategies to implement this policy would be: first, develop and implement site-specific quality management guidelines. Second strategy is enhance management skills of irrigation stakeholders through national and regional workshops for exchanging best practices, success stories, and challenges related to quality management and benchmarking, and also provide technical backstopping. Third strategy is conduct regional cooperation for improving irrigation performance through data sharing. Fourth strategy would be to consider the use of relevant tools, including mobile application softwares.
Back to you, Amare.
Thanks everyone for being with us. I really apologize for the mess. I think we have one very critical presentation which I don't want to miss. Probably will bring us all the different presentation we had this morning together and guide us toward this policy direction. So Amgad is Dr. Amgad Ilmahdi, head of MENA region at the International Water Management Institute based in Cairo. And Dr. Amgad is a water system and solution specialist with over 25 years experience and expertise in hydrology, water resource management, water accounting, water governance, water information management, digital technology for water management, water policy planning nexus, assessment and management in operational research and academic setting. So he will give us a presentation on new policy direction for irrigation development on Nile Basin. Amgad, you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours. Sorry for the whole mess.
No worries. Thanks, Amari. And I feel the pressure you are in. But I will try to be short. I think most of the introduction has been said by Stephen and other colleagues, where they highlighted like the driver, the context, and also the challenge that we are facing in the region. So as Amari said, what I will try to do here is really to repackage what you have here so far for the last 2.5 hours and bring that into a policy direction for the irrigation development in the Nile Basin. So, without going into that roadmap, but what I wanted to highlight here is really I will try to reflect on the topology of the system that has been used as a basic of that analysis, and also talk about like a key principles that we really need to follow if we really need to set the scene for the new policies for the Nile Basin, and then reflect on those three key thematic, let's say, for policy, which is achieving one system, planning and increasing efficiency, and building coherence and linkage. And then talk about like how we can make that happen and what is required in terms of the enabling environment. So that study was really part of the big study that was looking at the strategic options for meeting current and future water demand in the Nile Basin more efficiently and sustainably. And what you have here so far, it's really reflecting on those 6 components or interrelated components that show the baseline or updating the baseline for the water demand and actual use, but also looking at the future demand and mapping the irrigation potential with some scenarios of water saving, and also set the economic value for water for irrigation, and look at the basin-wide approach in terms of like the benchmarking, how we can set the benchmarking. And then finally, where I'm going to cover is really how we formalize this in some strategic recommendations for improved irrigation water management. Without taking long from you in terms of context, I think you have heard it all. The basin is complex, it's interconnected across different boundaries and different socioeconomics. Climate change play a major driver in terms of the change in the rainfall pattern or high temperature or increasing evaporation and sea level rise for the delta. The poverty level is quite high, and also the food insecurity, data sharing and availability and accessibility of that data, and even the accuracy. It's really one of the key challenge as well in the basin, taking like the level of investment at the moment from the Nile Basin in the Hadramit, but that also require more regulations around it. The economic transformation that's happening in response to climate crisis, and also how we can really make the basin meet the SDGs and what is required really to overcome all the barriers that the basin seen as well. So that is actually require really like innovations first at the technical level for both like demand and supply side or measures, but also to require an improvement in the management. So take that two key message in your brain for the following discussion. So we need innovations and we need to improve management. In terms of the typology that has been used as a basic, so what we look here is really how to define that intensive irrigation like in Egypt or semi-intensive like in Sudan, or extensive for highland or lowland. But we really follow that type of like based on the biophysical condition or the agroecology, the cropping pattern, the irrigation, water use, the level of productivity, and even the level of mechanization as well. I think the common characteristic is what we have seen is really the intensive system. Like in Egypt, it's always reported like high yield, and that for many crops, and that in comparison for all other systems. But also that also comes with like a high inputs in terms of resources like water and the efficiency as well. If we look at the semi-intensive system, like in Sudan, for like the wheat, the vegetable, the bananas, they actually having again high productivity in terms of in comparison to like extensive highland and lowland typology. Also the extensive highlands for like wheat, maize, sorghum, cotton, sweet potatoes, and sugarcane, actually having a higher productivity in comparison to the low system or the lowland system. But if we look at like to build that level of sustainable resilience for the community, and by looking at the GDP contribution by different sector like agriculture, industry, and service, what we see along the Nile Basin, it's only like 3 countries that agriculture really contribute 40% or plus, that like Burundi, Congo, and Ethiopia. And then we see like the lowest really in that comparison is really Egypt and Eritrea. However, if we look at the trend of the agricultural sector contribution to the GDP from 2014 to 2019, what we see, there is a clear decline in that, but also in the last 2 years, there is a clear jumping back again in many countries. And that actually reflecting on how the countries start to realize the need to invest in agriculture and also improve the productivity of the agriculture and also expand. So that actually require really to start to think about like a new generation of policies and investment in the agriculture, water management, and develop within the basin. So what does that entail? Before we talk to the policy, let's set some principles for us here to consider from the basin perspective. First, the basin really need to be looked at as one basin or one system. And that comes with like the cooperation, the harmonization of the water resource policy in terms of development, but also implementation. The second principle really is how the basin actually can meet the SDGs in terms of like poverty and food security by looking at improving the function of the basin and also the efficiency of the basin. And then, of course, come with the question about the scale, how we can support the smallholder farmers at different scale, how we can maximize the social, the economic, environmental return for the water that's actually used within the basin. And then the third principle here, it's really about like the irrigation economy needs, how we can build that coherence and linkage between the irrigation and other sectors in terms of the economic development. So this is the third principle. Whatever we propose as a policy, we need to link it with the other sector under the economic agenda. And that's really to ensure any investment in the irrigation using that the sustainable growth strategy and link anything with the economic development. So what does that entail in terms of like setting some new directions here? So achieving one system planning. So that also as a recommendation, the basin really need to look at the coordination and harmonizations. And that not just in terms of like the legal framework, but in terms of the policy, in terms of the regulatory of the system as well. And in terms of like creating the minimum requirement and setting but also need to strengthen the cooperation between state and sector as well. So as we do cooperation at the states or between states, we also need to look at the cooperation at the sector level, so vertically as well. We really need to be more inclusive and look at the fair distribution of the cost and benefits among the basin country and also among the sector as well, including, of course, gender equality. And developing the irrigation really to enable that lift all the millions that we are seeing in the basin here from the poverty, and that to really help the basin to meet the SDGs. And that require for any investment to be considered from the design to implementation to monitoring to evaluation, considering that poverty reduction focused approach. So it needs to be built in from the beginning. The second policy thematic area is really improving the function and the efficiency in the basin. And that, of course, should go beyond really the irrigation efficiency, and it needs to be reflected on based on the right scale as well. So when we talk about efficiency, we really need to consider the scale we are talking about. Are we talking about the basin efficiency or the country level or the irrigated or rain-fed irrigated, or it's old or new land as well? So the efficiency needs really to be managed at the appropriate scale. That's why we really need to look at the scale, suitability, design, and implementation of the policy for the efficiency, plus, of course, the water saving measure that can be applied. And of course, that need to be linked or come hand to hand as well with changing the corporate pattern as has been highlighted before. But again, the basin had the opportunity to look at the cooperation and virtual water trading. So how the basin can meet their SDGs demand and lift the poor people really with that virtual water trading policy or a basin trading policy. And also, as it's been highlighted, the deficit irrigation, again, especially for the commercial farm, need to be really considered with a potential of like 20% to improve. The expansion of the treated wastewater reuse, again, that really adding a great opportunity for the basin to meet the demand and to meet the future irrigation expansion as well. And of course, we need really the basin to think about the cost recovery, how we can actually promote that cost recovery in the irrigation system. That could be, of course, through service fees, for example, or the developing some incentive for less water polluter. So we really need to be creative in the way we can really assure the service continue and that build that cost recovery mechanism. The third area or the third thematic area is really building that coherence and linkage between sectors as well. And that comes with like to be able like to become more resilient economy. and that to improve, of course, the youth employment and engagement, and to ensure really avoid any market distortion that could happen as well. And that linkage to the economy really to ensure again the continuity or the continuous processing of using the innovations. And innovations, they are varied. It could be like looking at how you can solar technology for like shallow groundwater use to meet that demand, or the reuse of wastewater, or even the management type of recharge. But of course, that's also in the supply side, but you really need also to consider it on the management side, the innovation in terms of the management, the governance as well. The Basin really need to look at a wide tool of measurement and monitoring and evaluation. So we really need to look at the hydromet, how it can be revived, how it can be expanded, and how it can be supported again by standard and regulations for the data that come in. Valuing the water as well need to be really considered and to be within the Basin policy agenda, but it's not just to value the water as quantity, but also you really need to look at the quantity, the water use, and also the waste that actually generated. And of course, innovation that has been highlighted and mentioned as well. So innovations need to be considered again in terms of like the digital technology. We have seen smart agriculture everywhere now in the world with a very successful stories that can actually be transferred to the basin and adapted, and that to really to improve the water productivity and increase really the knowledge of water availability and quality, and that in terms of like predictions, tool for drought or for water flow forecasting as well. And of course, as mentioned as well, the Basin really need to look at increasing the productivity and efficiency, and that through like the export trade agreement, the crop trade policy, the Basin subsidizing. So that could be shifting crops from the intensive system to the semi-intensive system, or the lowland system or highland system. So we really need to look at like how really the Basin can look at the agriculture sector as one rather than a divided sub-sectors. And of course, we can't ignore really the private sector to be engaged in that process and support really the government. And that really need to make the government really to consider what type of action that can be done to enable really the private sector engagement, where they can really come and invest in the technology. They can come and invest in like solar power, or using groundwater, or developing more commercial farm. So that private sector really need to be engaged in the process as well. So to make that happen, of course, it's required to create the right environment for it. So I divided it like in three areas as well. So first, you really need to look at like the multilateral development bank, for example, where it can be really a joint venture of the Basin country, where it can really act as a catalyst for the innovation and promote really the technology to be used. So it can be playing a good financing mechanism and partnership. Also, the countries really need to capitalize on the Basin knowledge network and the existing institutions of cooperation. But if we look at the NBI, how NBI can also help. So the NBI has invested in the hydromet data. So that really need to be continued to invest in the hydromet data as well, and strengthen the multi-stakeholder. And that could be through like communications tool, use of digital technology, promote strong, really public-private policy. Also from the Basin perspective or NBI, so the Basin organization really need to establish their convening power to some extent to assert really the centrality of agricultural water to SDGs agenda, and promote that knowledge exchange and transfer and catalyze the collection action. So it's not just an individual actions to be taken on board. but also need to be really a spread-head effort to really to look at managing the basin better and put our hand on really the status of the basin by looking at developing a basin water accounting database that can actually support the effort and strengthen the data environment. If we look at the individual government, what they can do, so the government and basin authority, they can work together and invest in institutional reform and arrangement and also incentive. But also to the way they implement the policy and also the investment, that need to come with like a rationale case for any development that look at really the cooperation, the efficiency, the linkage to a wider development goal. And also promoting the private sector engagement and local agribusiness industry. So that need to be also considered from the country perspective. And last, by the country as well, so the government really need to adapt more bottom-up planning and implementation. And with that, I thank you all, and hopefully it didn't take a long time from what is expected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amgad. This is really very, very enlightening, comprehensive, and brought up really some of the things we missed because of technology, let me call it that way. I like the way you try to put also the flow of idea from, the need to build sustainable and more resilient community, and you focus on common sets of principles, then achieving one system, all the elements you mentioned under that, improving functioning efficiency, and building coherence and linkage. And I think finally the enabling environment. I don't want to go into each of those. I think it is very clear. Thanks a lot again, and I apologize once again for the mess we encountered in between. And now, with interest of time, without taking too much of further time, I would invite Dr. Abdul Karim Said, who is going to moderate the 15 minutes panel discussion. Abdul Karim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Amara, thank you very much. It's going to be very, very challenging task because we have limited time in the program. It says 15 minutes. I hope we can have slightly more than that. Very interesting session for me, at least. I can say what I liked most in this session is it is very much solution oriented. It's not about discussing challenges or problems. Quite a number of types of solutions recommended. Okay, just to, in a nutshell, what is the problem we have? Saying population is increasing, food demand increasing, per capita water availability declining, knowing that water is central to food security as well. Then climate change, unpredictability, climate extremes also affecting food security. Then question is, how can the governments of the Nile Basin countries address food insecurity for their current and growing population? Quite, a number of solutions and additional information were given. The good news, the arable land is there, rainfall, we have surface water, groundwater. At the same time, irrigation is expanding as one of the solutions, but interestingly, quite a number of research have also shown there are also other solutions, which were shown also by one of the keynote speakers, for example. Just hold on, please. Yeah. So on sustainable intensification, we have also seen at the research level by Dr. Tedros, for example, what he called conservation agriculture. I mean, the promising result he has in order to increase the productivity of already, land which is currently under agriculture, for example. So, but going forward, Dr. Samuel's presentation showed us also according to plans of countries, there is actually potential, or there is a plan to substantially increase irrigation in the Nile Basin. Of course, it has its own consequences given the scarcity of water in the Nile Basin, especially as we have said earlier, even without climate change, as the population grows, the per capita water demand is going down. We have seen from Kiran's presentation, how big the potential are, especially the arable land and the land suitable for irrigation. At the same time, the question is about water as well. So now, with this just as a background, I would like to pose a few questions. We don't have a lot of time to the panel. All right, to the panel. I guess the panel members are Stefan has left. I think Amara, please confirm with me. Panel members are Dr. Amgad, Dr. Sammu, Tedros, Mr. Lul. I think these are the panel members, right? Did I miss anyone?
Yes, you're right. Stefan left because of another commitment. So you call Tedros. Maybe if you have specific question for him. Also, you have Sammu, you have Tedros, you have Lul.
Very good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I will start with the technical solution, then I will conclude, with Amgad. Amgad, get ready on the policy side. So, Tedros, you also asked the question yourself. I mean, very interesting, very promising results. You said the question is, how do we scale up? So we have also seen from Stefan's presentation, quite a number of solutions. The question is, given that, for example, maybe nearly 70% of the population at least in the Eastern Africa region or Nile Basin, depend on rainfed agriculture, smallholder agriculture. What is your suggestion for scaling up of promising solutions which have been developed at research level? Dr. Tedros, you have maximum of 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Abdulkarim. Of course, you posed the questions that I was also asking. So one thing that I could see is that from the keynote speaker, also they identified to intensify a rainfed system. That is one thing. So in that case, we don't need those irrigation technologies or access to groundwater or surface water. But the main thing is we need to also consider, to use surface and groundwater to maximize crop productivity. So in that case, access to technology is the main barrier in this case. So we have been doing, a survey with LC EUMI together here with Bahar Dar University. What are the barriers on irrigation technologies? Why they are not expanding to smallholder farmers? We have got several barriers to be solved by the policy or the government, as well as even the foreign exchange to import the technologies. So all those are barriers. But what I'm thinking is, what if we can, plan to have technologies that we can produce internally here within the nation to lift water with simple energy that might solve some of the access to technology and some of the barrier with that of foreign exchange. And in terms of conservation agriculture, we have also a challenge of getting mulch, and also this mulch is from either grass or crop residue. So farmers also, they need it to feed their livestock. So what we are planning was to intercrop these different forage varieties with rain-fed agriculture. For example, most of the farmers here, they produce corn in the rainy season. So during late rainy season, when the corn is at the mature stage, they can at least intercrop forage varieties in which they can use for animals, as well as to treat their soil fertility. That's what I'm thinking, just to give a little bit of solution for the challenge that I already posed. Thank you.
Okay, I think the challenge of scaling up to a wider scale still remains, and thank you very much for your input in that discussion. This would have been really a major discussion by itself, because many millions of people depend on that solutions potentially. So, but in the interest of time, I'll just leave it there. Now, coming to Dr. Samu, I'm not going to ask you about the scenarios or projections, but you have an interesting suggestion, what you call progressive management and development. Sorry, progressive water management and development strategy, which you in the graph, if I remember well, where as irrigation or water requirement part of the basin increases, from the other side, because of savings, I presume, the water demand goes down, so that the basin can sustain the additional water demands or projects or irrigation projects, for example. My question to you really is, how do you think countries of the Nile Basin can take this forward?
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Karim. I think the first thing that should be implemented is there has to be a cooperative institutional mechanism that countries should talk to each other transparently. Without the cooperative institutional mechanism that monitors the basin, that produce local mechanisms, with all in place, I think there is a chance that the more countries are developing, the more management can be implemented. Of course, it has to have a legal instrument on it. If countries are not managing water, there has to be a punitive approach. The institutions that manage should have a kind of punishment or punitive measures in that country. And that way, I think, of course, what is my assumption is that, of course, countries are also eager. The more they save water, the more they want to expand their land. Also, there is that opportunities that also countries are eager to do. That institutional mechanism also should curtail that. So the more the water is accessible for management, the more it should also enable other countries to engage in irrigation. I think that the institutional mechanism is the most important part of this progressive development approach. If I say one thing on the Theodore's question, if you give me a little bit, I think upscaling is very, very essential in that part of the world. There has to be a mechanism of clustering small land ownership into a big institution. The land is their own, the resources is their own, but there has to be organizational, institutional organizations that brings them together as a cluster of groups, so that each of these small-scale research implementation can be quickly upscaled. I think that mechanism is, I think in Ethiopia also they have started in some places. That would be one way to go around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe not a question to you, but just a question for reflection by everybody. Yes, the institutional mechanism is important to understand. What should be the role of NBI? What could be the role of NBI, for example? The role of REX as well, because this is a major issue in the Nile Basin. It's going to be probably even more severe. So, but I'm not going to ask this question to you, but just like for our own thinking, what could be the role of NBI in this? Now, coming to Leul.
Can I continue a little bit on this?
Well, in the interest of time, maybe I'll give you half a minute. I give you half a minute.
It's okay. I was thinking the role of NBI. I think we can envisage in the Nile Basin two kinds of institution. One is a Nile Basin Commission which focuses on the legal aspect, the monitoring aspect. NBI can reformulate itself as a Nile Basin enterprise in such a way that it focuses on liaising funds, infrastructure funds, joint projects, because it has enormous experience that we cannot miss. Nile Basin has a lot of knowledge, experience. I mean, we don't want it to go away like that. So I think it can reformulate itself as a Nile Basin enterprise that can support the coming Nile Basin Commission in terms of this harnessing financial resources, coming up with economic projects, viable projects, and of course, present its case to the Nile Basin Commission. In that way, it will make itself viable. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Now, coming back to Liul now, irrigation performance benchmarking. I mean, the need for this, it cannot be overstated. My only question now on this regard is, can you share with us experience of like benchmarking irrigation performance in a transboundary river basin context? Why I'm asking this question is usually, irrigation, however, impact is potential. It's also transboundary, but usually it's largely, country specific or national, nationally owned projects usually. So now, how do you think such benchmarking processes or approaches could be implemented in a transboundary context? And if you know any example from anywhere in the world where this might have worked, the floor is yours, Lord. Mr. Liul, do you hear me? Okay. I'm not sure if Liul is muted.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Karim. I have tried to search for literature in this regard. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any literature with regard to transboundary benchmarking. Actually, the irrigation benchmarking, even it is new to a new practice, it needs some kind of awareness raising forum. Apart from that, even in some countries such as Australia and England are just about starting to implement benchmarking. So if we are going to apply it in the Nile Basin, I guess we have to make a lot of awareness raising sessions. And I think establishing a forum for that purpose will be important. I think this is my suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. It's more like learning by doing. So the forum is important. I think the sensitization or awareness raising and possibly capacity building as well. I think I agree with you. Now I'm coming back to you. Now you have summed it up very nicely and then put the policy context, because there are a number of solution options which have been explored and quantified as part of the bigger study. And then quite a number of policy areas. I think 3 policy areas you mentioned. My question to you now is, given the transboundary context we are discussing in the Nile Basin, and the problem, as we know, is both national, every country is concerned about food security of its citizens, at the same time transboundary because of the water connection between the countries. Which of the policy recommendations you gave us do you think are quick wins, quick work, can bring quick gains by the countries? Where could they start together? Amgad, you have the floor.
Yep, thanks, Abdul Karim. That's really a great question, and it requires a lot of thought, really, to make it happen, because it's all come really under, if I frame it under 3 keywords: cooperative. So that the nation or any country in the basin need to come with that cooperative. Second, authoritative. So they need to be authoritative or feeling that we have the authority. And third, sharing the benefits. So those 3 principles, every country need to bring it to the table, of course. And that comes to your question about the role of NBI. So I think the role of NBI need to get that collective authoritative relationship and to be the authority of the basin agency that really do the monitoring, the evaluation, the management of the cascading system of storages. And we have a successful cases in Australia, like with Murray Darling Basin, that it's considered as a transboundary basin between 6 states. We've been facing the same issues, more or less, until the new Water Act in 2007 established that Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and start to really regulate and manage the whole system as one. So this number one activity to be really managing the whole system as one, sharing the benefits between all countries. But coming back to your question, what is really the easy win? I think it's really the easy win. It's really hard taking the current situation in the basin, but I think nothing will happen without really reaching an agreement, and that really. So the easy win is really they have to cooperate together. They have to, like the whole basin country or all basin countries need really to work together, taking like this basin is shared by everyone, and everyone has the right to use it. Everyone has to get the benefit of it, and how we can manage it all together. I like always like the call for like get a representative for the basin by itself on the table. Can the river speak to itself? And I think this is what is missing in all those discussions. Who's actually representing the basin? Yeah.
Very good. Very interesting, actually, statement to wrap it up. The basin has to speak, has to have a voice, because so far no one is representing the basin, the way I understood it. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. I think, well, very interesting points raised. Maybe I'll not really take time to summarize. I can simply, put it like this. The problem we know, population is increasing, the per capita water demand, availability is going down, even without climate change. Climate change adds to the pressure. The question is now, how do the basin states feed their population as the populations grow and more climate uncertainty is prevailing? Fortunately, there are quite a number of solutions, many of them at research level, at small scale level, but they need to be scaled up. On the other hand, also basin countries are also planning substantially to, like expansion of irrigated areas. It has its own consequences. Of course, it can add to the food security. At the same time, it also adds to the challenge of the water. So what are the solutions? A number of solutions have been proposed, what you call options. Some of them at local, like pilot level, probably. Others are more transboundary kind of solutions. All of them promising, the way I see them. The question, of course, remains how to take them forward. So the way I see is quite a number of recommendations. Again, policy recommendations have been given. At the same time, how to manage irrigation performance have been also presented using the benchmarking approach. I think the investment side was presented by Dr. Semu. I think we can say, I can say, sorry, I cannot speak for you, but I can say that the policy dimension is very important. At the same time, the management and investment side are all important. So NBDF has a role to play, countries have a role to play, and then possibly other institutions have a role to play. And then I would like to sum up by statement from Amgad: the basin should have a voice, should be represented when the countries meet. Thank you very much. I think I finished in just 18 minutes, possibly. So I have exceeded only 3 minutes. Amara, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I again apologize. Really, I ate up your time almost like 14 minutes something. That's very bad. But the whole presentation and the discussion was very informative, I think, and what came up at the end, particularly through Amgad, very systematically organized recommendation based on previous presentation was quite impressive. I think a lot of information. I'm sure NBDF will synthesize this, compile this, and share with relevant stakeholders as a policy agenda for future use. And with this, I would like to take the opportunity really to thank all participants and the keynote speakers, the translators, the IT team, the reporters, and the presenters, and the moderator, and the people also who really finally gave us this key information as a panel discussion. I thank you all. Hopefully there is another opportunity to have this kind of platform and the talk, discuss, probably take those current agendas further to next level. I wish you a happy evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amare, Dr. Abdul Karim, and the presenters. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.